So for this week on Cyber School, we're going to talk about successfully integrating our products with InformaCast. We've been working with the product InformaCast offered by the company SingleWire for a long time, and we've won many awards from them just because we've had such a long-standing relationship with them, a big pedigree for our products on there, and one of my favorite products at CyberData that that's been watching our Cyber School forever would know that I drone on and on about this SIP IP66 horn. Well, we've got the InformaCast variant, and that has won in multiple years the best IP speaker. So it's a really good option there. And today we're just going to talk about, how you integrate our products with SingleWire's InformaCast. So a little bit about InformaCast. It's an emergency notification suite used to generate emergency notifications. It also has a really good bell scheduler used with it. So it's very popular in, of course, big businesses, but in a lot of school districts, just because it has that bell scheduler built into it, and it's built around emergency notification. It's really designed from the ground up with that. And by far it is, in my opinion, in terms of emergency notification, it is the best out there. It really doesn't get better than SingleWire's InformaCast. It's available in both on-premise or in a hybrid environment. If you're using the new InformaCast Fusion, it is going to be hybrid-based, where you'll have a local on-premise server. Or if you're using kind of the older version of InformaCast, still just as good as Fusion, it's just going to be solely on-premise. And typically when you get InformaCast, it's going to be packaged with Cisco Unified Call Manager, just because I believe Cisco owns them or has a partnership with them. I'm not sure about the actual relationship with them. Not really important for the purposes of today's discussion, but usually when you're running into InformaCast, you're trying to do anything with InformaCast, you're probably using it with Cisco Unified Call Manager or some Cisco-related product. Not always, but predominantly, that's how you're going to be running into InformaCast. And there's really two different ways to actually go and utilize InformaCast in terms of sending out notifications. You can go and send them out through the web interface or via a call. So it gives you a lot of capability. Say if you're working in a front office, you can easily go and get out the emergency notifications with the web interface from InformaCast, or you can also use it just by phone by dialing a particular number that corresponds with a particular message group and an actual message, and just be able to trigger that message. And you can do likewise with, say, products from CyberData, like our Underdesk help button that you can discreetly press and trigger an emergency notification through InformaCast. So it's really, really powerful. And in most cases, of course, because it's InformaCast, it's going to require an InformaCast-enabled product. There are specific examples of things like, say, our SIP-enabled call buttons, both indoor or outdoor varieties that kind of work with InformaCast. They don't work directly with InformaCast. They're kind of complementary products to InformaCast. But in a general sense, if you're going to be trying to use any CyberData products with InformaCast, if there is an InformaCast-enabled product variant of that, as an example, the IP66 horn, or one of our speakers, you're going to want the InformaCast-enabled version, so that way you can actually utilize all of the features that come with InformaCast, because there's some proprietary stuff with it. It needs to register with InformaCast. So let's talk about some requirements. Of course, it's going to have to be an InformaCast-enabled product to actually utilize it and register it with InformaCast. Most of our products that you would actually want for this type of a setup are available in what we call an InformaCast-enabled variant. And that just means that they support the regular SIP functionality, so they'll register with your phone system. They'll support local multicast, have intrusion sensors, event generation, all the stuff that you would imagine from a regular CyberData product, but then they also support all of the InformaCast capabilities on top of that. I like to refer to it as the regular SIP version of the product, so say like our regular SIP speaker. The InformaCast-enabled variant of it does everything that the SIP version does, with the little cherry on top of InformaCast capability. You're just getting that little accent in the InformaCast capability with it. And when you're actually trying to set up some of the equipment on the network so that way it can work with InformaCast, InformaCast is going to recommend you use one of two protocols. There's kind of another way to go about it, but the main way that they'll recommend is using a protocol called SLP, Service Location Protocol. And basically, it's just a way that our device can send out a request to the server and get a response back of where all of the files are, so the device knows what to do and knows where the server is. So that way it can go and just automatically work with the system. The cool thing about InformaCast is when it's all set up properly on the network, it makes all of our hardware plug and play, where you plug it in and it just automatically gets discovered by InformaCast. You populate, you fill out a couple things in InformaCast, and things just ready to go. But you can also do that with DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, which just allows you, when you plug in your device and it gets an IP address, the server also tells it, hey, go to InformaCast and grab all of your configuration rules. And really, those two protocols are just going to be used for server discovery, actually just understanding where that InformaCast server is. So that way you can set up everything on the InformaCast side, the back-end side, so that way it can go and receive all the different notifications. But there's also a newer version, relatively, of InformaCast, anything that's version 12.1 and above, that actually supports SIP via InformaCast, which makes it really powerful for things like our InformaCast-enabled intercoms or even some of our speakers, which gives the devices the actual capability to do SIP registration and InformaCast registration directly with InformaCast. And that can save you on some license fees with, say, Cisco Call Manager, where it might be a little bit more expensive to get a license instead of just running it on InformaCast, where it might be a little bit cheaper, depending on the rate and where you're actually getting all those licenses from. So it gives you a lot of capability on how to utilize the CyberData equipment in the environment. As we move forward, just kind of talking about device setup, if you're going to be using SLP or DHCP, again, Service Location Protocol or Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, it makes just about everything really, really easy in terms of setup and makes it truly plug and play. Where in terms of the actual InformaCast setup, you plug it in, and when you go and you plug in your 60 speakers, you pull up InformaCast, and InformaCast will say, hey, you've got 60 new speakers, and you can just go in there and name all your speakers and put them all in the different groups. It makes it very, very easy to go and set everything up. But in some cases, you can't use the DHCP rule, or you might not be able to use SLP. You can actually point our devices directly to the server, and that's one of the few instances where you'd actually have to touch an InformaCast-enabled device by meaning logging into their web interface and using what we call the InformaCast server field to actually point the CyberData device to that InformaCast server. Again, in most cases, you're going to be using either SLP or DHCP to point the devices to the InformaCast server, but in cases where you can't do that, they are kind of few and far between, but we like to support those customers that are in these scenarios. You can point your device directly to the InformaCast server. And once you finish that part, you just add in the particular device into the InformaCast server as what they call a speaker. And again, that's just terminology in how they call all of these different devices, whether you're registering a strobe that is definitely not a speaker, or an intercom that has a speaker, but it's not really a speaker per se. That's just what InformaCast calls all of the devices that are receiving notifications from InformaCast. Even if it's not a speaker, they just call it a speaker. It's just terminology. It really doesn't matter. And then once you get all of that part set up, you get all of the devices actually integrated into InformaCast. You just add them into different message groups, which are essentially zones. And these can be, say, different floors in a building, different wings of a school, an entire school, say a warehouse in an industrial environment. And you're just adding in all of these different message recipient groups, which again are just zones where you want those different notifications to go to. When you're actually using InformaCast, after you go through the process of getting everything added into groups or zones, you go through all of that work, then there's basically really two different ways that you can send audio or notifications to our devices. And they really break down into what you would kind of expect. You can send pre-recorded audio. So these can be different audio files. I believe they support MP3 and WAV files that you can upload to the InformaCast server. And you can set up, say, for example, different calls to a specific number for conversation's sake 123 to trigger a particular pre-recorded audio message. So that could be things like, say a fire drill, an earthquake drill, what have you. For that type of thing, or actual emergency scenarios. But then you can also make live pages through the system and what they call ad hoc pages, which function in terms of actually triggering the message just like they would with a pre-recorded audio. You set up a distinct rule on whatever phone system you're using to call a number, and it links it over to InformaCast and tells InformaCast, hey, number 321 was called. That means that it's an ad hoc live page, which means a live page to all the endpoints. And then whatever you're saying through the phone comes out through all the speakers automatically. So it makes it really trick and easy to go and make these different announcements through InformaCast using all of your CyberData peripherals in your equipment. And one of the nice things with InformaCast is you've got the capability to actually control the volume through InformaCast. So if you're trying to equalize the volume level, say in your different classrooms, and trying to remember, oh, in that classroom, is that one using the volume dial? Or what if we are using the volume dial and teenagers go and mess with the volume dial on it? Or is this classroom set to volume level 3 or volume level 4? You can set everything per actual message through InformaCast. And our devices use volumes 0 through 9. So that way you can go and automatically set the volume through there and have it just set predominantly through the CyberData product. So if you set something, say an emergency level fire drill notification at emergency level 9, it's going to play at max volume through all of your CyberData equipment without having to go and actually configure your CyberData equipment to play at that particular volume. It's all handled by InformaCast, which makes it really easy. And in a lot of senses, if you're just using our products through InformaCast to only receive InformaCast notifications, you almost don't even need to log into the CyberData device. You can do everything through InformaCast. The last thing I want to talk about is SIP, what we call SIP via InformaCast. Um, there's a couple different ways that you'll hear about it. This is the way that we like to refer to it at CyberData, and that's actually how you can register your InformaCast-enabled devices to use SIP and InformaCast. We get SIP functionality from InformaCast, so we call it SIP via InformaCast, and it gives you the capability to actually go and register your InformaCast-enabled devices to InformaCast, and that way you can save, for example, a seat license on Cisco Call Manager, which can get kind of pricey, and sometimes there's only a certain amount of licenses that you can use. So you can actually register the equipment directly with InformaCast. And a key example for that would be a thing like, say, one of your indoor intercoms. And if you're going to be using that, say, for just emergency notification, and when you press that call button on the intercom, it calls a ring group. You can do that through InformaCast. And there's no sense using a device license on Cisco Call Manager if that costs more than the license that you would be able to use with InformaCast, because you can get the same functionality through InformaCast and save money. So it becomes really advantageous to do things that way. But it can also work in the inverse, where you can call from your phone system through InformaCast to, say, a distinct speaker, which can be a little bit more difficult in say, using a message group that is only one speaker. It takes a little bit more work to set that up, but you can just call directly to that extension through your phone system because of the feature set of SIP via InformaCast. And you can still trigger all the events and pages and emergency notifications that you would expect. You basically just get another little cherry on top of InformaCast capability, which is the SIP functionality built into InformaCast. So it makes it really, really ideal and perfect for products like our InformaCast-enabled intercoms or our speakers, products that you would generally maybe use for two-way communication. So finally, just to summarize, InformaCast is really easy to integrate with CyberData products because of the different integration methods that you can use: service location protocol, dynamic host configuration protocol, or just directly pointing the device to InformaCast. It makes it plug and play in most installations, which is ideally what you want to get to, where you just plug in the hardware, you do a little bit of stuff on the InformaCast server backend, and you're done, and the system is ready to use. And it makes a lot of these installations very painless and very, very easy. And one of the big selling points for that, of course, is the plug and play nature of it, but you can control most of the aspects of the devices. Again, the volume levels and the actual groups that the equipment is going to be in, you can control all of that through InformaCast, which in a lot of senses, especially with, say, things like our speakers, you almost don't even need to log into the web interface of the CyberData speaker, and you can handle everything through InformaCast, which is really cool and really unique to InformaCast. And one of the final little kind of kind of saving graces almost for InformaCast is the sit via InformaCast capability, which can really give you a lot of capability and potentially save you money, depending on the platform that you're using the equipment on, because of the capability to actually register your SIP equipment with InformaCast. Of course, they do have to be InformaCast enabled for that, but it gives you the capability to really go and save money and get the same style of functionality while saving money. You're not losing any features by having a device registered directly with InformaCast.
Thank you for watching this edition of Cyber School. If you have any questions, please get in contact with our sales department. They are available by email at sales@cyberdata.net or by phone at 831-373-2601 extension 334. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe for more content like this from CyberData.